Okay, folks, I think it's time to go ahead and get started. Thank you for attending another Workshop Wednesday. We're excited to have made it to work in this crazy weather we're having, which is why I might look a little disheveled today. But happy to have Jeffrey Wolfsberg here with us. He is from the state's Behavioral Health Care, Developmental Disabilities, and Hospitals unit, and he's here to talk about an important program that he is the director of called the Recovery Friendly Workplace. Um, so Jeffrey, thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you. And if you need anything from me, you need me to share your screen or anything, you just let me know, okay?
Sounds good. I'll do an audio check and everybody hear me well. Just give me a thumbs up if you can.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Wolfsberg. I'm the program director for Recovery Friendly Workplace, which is embedded in the Behavioral Health Care and Developmental Disabilities and Hospitals Division of the state. Well, like sometimes they call here in Rhode Island, Buda, I guess. I'm a Massachusetts native. Really a pleasure to be here today. I hope, from what I understand from Jen, you knew what the topic was, so there probably is some degree of interest on your own part about, what is a recovery-friendly workplace? What is this program? So I hope that you leave the call today with a better understanding of what we are up to, how I can and my team can help you, and why this whole initiative is getting momentum both on a national and regional statewide level. If you have questions, I hope I'm going to have enough time at the end to answer all your questions. But like I said, we're embedded in the Department of Behavioral Health Care and Developmental Disabilities and Hospitals, which is the largest department that oversees all the prevention and recovery related to mental health and substance abuse issues for the state. So a brief history. Recovery Friendly Workplace started out actually in New Hampshire with Governor Sununu, who has a long history of being committed to issues around mental health and addiction. It was based on the idea that the workplace is a viable opportunity for us to address issues of addiction and mental health, knowing that a significant amount of people who are struggling with substance use related issues and mental health issues are actually employed. This whole idea that people that are struggling with mental health and or an addiction are not able to hold down jobs is certainly is one element that is true, but a significant portion of people are actively engaged in employment, and we're working with them, beside them. So it makes sense that the workplace is a place where we're addressing these issues. Prior to coming to this role as program director in November, I was the senior director of a large mental health agency in Framingham, Mass. And I managed a team of 70 individuals. And the one thing that I noticed, and you probably know as well, is I don't think we fully have digested the impact COVID had on all of us, and certainly the impact it's had on the workplace. I took a team of 70 people in 2020 through the whole COVID experience. That meant testing 70 people every single week and dealing with all the anxieties and stresses that went along with all those emotions that we all experienced. We went from actively in the office employment to working from home, back to the office, back to home several times. And yeah, I don't fully understand, and I don't think a lot of us do, the true full impact it's had on the workplace, but I know it has had a significant impact on the workplace in terms of what people expect out of us as leaders in the workplace. That's still evolving, what people expect from work, and what people think about when they think about work-life balance. That, I think, is a significant issue that drives some of the initiatives around recovery-friendly workplace, as well as a younger workforce that's entering the talent pool right now, which is expecting more from employment than just a job and a paycheck. I'm 58 years old, and I grew up in not ever discussing my mental health with my employer, but now it's a significant part of my daily conversations with people that report to me. And it's part of my leadership style is to address the mental health environment and the mental health of those people that work for me, in addition to their overall work performance. And then I think what we're seeing, certainly as we're trying to hire and maintain and retain talent, is that the expectation that the workplace does address mental health and substance use is part of almost everybody's expectation during interviews. And instead of looking at it as a liability, the workplaces that I work with, people that become members of Recovery Friendly Workplace, see their mental health strategy as a strength, not a liability. They are using their programming as a way of attracting and holding on to talent, not something that they want to kind of keep under, under wraps and not share with anybody, which is a significant change in how we see this issue being addressed in the workplace. Right now, there's over 30 states that are involved in recovery workplace initiatives. We collaborate with all those states in what's called a community of practice. We also work with the U.S. Department of Labor and the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. So this is not only just a statewide initiative, this is something that is gaining traction on a national level. Google, for instance, last year put out a press release saying that over the next coming years, they will be worldwide a recovery-friendly workplace and be adopting many of the initiatives that we'll be talking about today and some of the practices and principles. So it's not just a localized effort. You're going to see more of this as time goes by. SHRM, I never pronounced that correctly, Society for Human Resource Management, it's a big part of their initiative as well, getting human resource professionals to look at how we're creating a recovery-friendly workplace. So what is it? The initiative here in Rhode Island, it's based on the idea that we acknowledge the role that employers hold in elevating the importance of mental health and substance use in the workplace. The objective of the initiative is to recruit businesses and civic leaders across the state that collaboratively identify and implement RFW principles across all industries to improve workplace well-being and performance. What it means is an organization that uses evidence-based policies and practices to unite the entire organization by recognizing recovery from substance use and mental health conditions as a strength and be willing to work intentionally with people in recovery. Here in Rhode Island, we started this program in 2020. It was first housed at Rhode Island College, Rick, moved to Buda in 2022. We had a little bit of a hiatus last year because we didn't have a director. So it started off with a real robust effort. And then this last year, we've had really no one in the director's seat until I came on November 5th. But since then, we have about 125 members. Predominantly in the construction, higher education, hospitality, government, and healthcare industries. So when you become a member of Recovery Friendly Workplace, you're a city or town, what comes with that? What is that? What is it all about? What do we offer you? Well, a lot of it comes down to one-on-one advising and coaching that with myself as a program director or one of our advisors. Peer learning series, much like we're doing right now, but we have a webinar series that happens every single month, as well as other ongoing trainings on site or virtual. Trainings around Narcan, for instance, is usually the first step place that businesses or towns and cities or organizations want to explore. I know most of you guys are coming from, all you guys are coming from cities and towns. So you are what we call a lot of public facing offices. So you have a lot of interaction with the public. So having Narcan training and Narcan supplies available, just in case there's an overdose, to be able to prevent it or reverse it is probably essential to how you are providing support and care for your residents in your town or city. We also have the ability to come into the organization and do substance use and mental health assessments and give you an actual score to show you how you're doing on specific elements, both leadership, equity and inclusion, employee benefits, and culture, workplace culture. We have a job employment and recruitment portal on our website, which if you're posting for positions, you can put the position on our website. And that website's directly linked to the recovery community here in Rhode Island, which is often an overlooked talent pool. Obviously, people with substance use backgrounds sometimes have criminal issues as well. So there's a huge push in this state to help people get jobs with criminal backgrounds and substance use and mental health backgrounds. But by being on the website, by posting positions, which other industries are doing and going to be doing, it's telling the recovery community that you are ready to receive them. You understand what recovery means, and you have an office environment that supports it. their mental health and substance use. So you're going to get some wonderful talent from that community. The RFW toolkit, which you see two images here on the screen. There's a national one, that's the dark blue one, and there's a localized one, the pink one. Those are downloadable toolkits on our website and very informative. I would encourage you to download those. I've been speaking with the governor about getting tax credits. This is more so for private businesses and vendor points for contracts. That's a pending issue. And then the use of our logo and materials. If you're recruiting, the logo tells the recovery community and others that you are a recovery-friendly workplace and that you are kind of prepared to support them if they decide to work with you. We're seeing it. We are a recovery-friendly workplace here at Buda, and we certainly share that during our interviews to let people know that we are invested in this issue. So what does substance use and mental health cost us? You know, it's believed that it costs about $1 trillion a year, about $3,100 per employee. And how does that shake out? It has to do a lot with absenteeism, lateness, lower productivity, morale, connection to organizational missions, diminished team unity, accidental deaths, injuries, higher healthcare costs, litigation. And then the old paradigm, which is, you know, when you find someone who's struggling with a mental health issue or a substance use issue, is to, you know, terminate, rehire, and retrain. And we're realizing now that that model doesn't work, of course, that the economic support, identifying someone who's struggling, providing proper support, returning them to their workplace as a whole person is a much more economical investment and better for the employee, because you have an employee who really feels like you cared about them and comes back with, you know, we see it just much more higher dedication to the position and loyalty to the town or city that they're working for. This is something that I saw a lot when I worked at that mental health agency up in Framingham, Mass. What really got me involved in this work, you know, I've been working in the addiction mental health field for 25 years. And what really cemented my passion for doing this particular work was we were about a $250 million agency. Jen and Ernie heard me tell this story. So up in Massachusetts. So we needed to buy out. We were in a vulnerable place. We could have easily been bought out by a larger agency. So we were trying to avoid that. We wanted to maintain our independence. So we were going around buying smaller agencies, 50 million, 80 million, 90 million. The problem with that is that as we gobbled up these other agencies and integrated many of their people into our agency, we started losing sight of values that we really kind of held close to our heart about how we treated people. The last purchase that we did was about a $95 million agency, and we brought in their entire HR department. My team, which was the peer support and recovery coaches team, again, 70 people, all of them with lived experience. So these are people with, you know, histories of mental health and or addiction. I went to the HR team and said, you know, we need to sit down and I need to share with you, you know, what it means to lead a team like this. It's very different than anything else, you know, when you have people with lived experience. And they were like, no, we got it. We understand it. We've worked with people like this before. And I knew they didn't. Well, a few weeks after they took over, one of my employees, a longtime employee who's been with me for 9 years, relapsed, and he got into a car accident, got a DUI, and lost his driver's license. And we let HR know, and they immediately sent us a notice saying, you know, you need to terminate this person. He no longer kind of has all the, you know, mandates we need for the position. And I said, no, we can't do that. You don't understand. This person really sees the team that he works for as his family. You know, the workplace is, for many of us, the workplace is more than just a bunch of people we see every day for 8 hours. You know, if you look at the data, and you'll see a couple of slides from now, the power that a manager has on an employee's life can sometimes be more significant than their spouse or other loved ones, and how it can impact their mental health. And I said to him, this employee really sees our team as his family. He moved up here years ago from South Carolina, and all his family's back there. So we can't terminate him. I will find out ways of helping this employee to work from home until we can support him to get back to work. And I pushed, and eventually I was overruled, and we terminated the employee. Weeks later, he took his life. That is an extreme example of just, you know, what I call playing Jenga with employees' mental health, which is just taking out piece after piece after piece until the thing falls. not realizing, what you're really doing. We were a mental health agency. So there were many other, scenarios much like that, and to the point where I decided to resign and move on. But that's where I became really invested in the workplace is a powerful place for us to do good. But what the research is showing us is that we can do good and maintain, adherence to many of the accountability measures that we have, whether it's a private business for profits or it's just deliverables for a public or government office. What seemed to be the biggest problem was recognizing the difference between an employee struggling versus a performance issue. And this is one of the things we do a lot of training on when the business has us come in, or a school or a town or a city has us come in, is helping a supervisor or manager to see this person who is, maybe coming to late more often. Someone says, hey, I found them sleeping at work. They seem to be more argumentative or short-tempered. Well, you can put it together as many performance improvement plans as you want, but at some point you have to bring up the issue and address the issue of asking them, are you struggling with a mental health issue? Are you struggling with a substance use issue? Because, you can try to work on the performance, but if it really is a mental health issue, there's nothing that can be done unless you address that issue. So understanding the difference between a symptom and a performance issue is something that many employers, civic organizations, towns and cities and schools, anybody has a hard time understanding unless they've been trained. Most meetings that I go to when I'm talking about recovery-friendly workplace, someone usually says, well, isn't this what an EAP is supposed to do? And I'm not knocking EAPs. I think EAPs can do some real good, but there is some limitations to an EAP, such as lack of awareness to something specifically related to that industry. I had this conversation with, there are 3 large construction companies in the state. All 3 of them are recovery-friendly workplaces. And we talked about EAPs and really not having the awareness of what are the specific challenges associated with working as a construction laborer or construction executives. So EAPs are just usually these kind of big kind of places that, you call into this 800 number and you get somebody and they don't necessarily understand the idiosyncrasies of working in your particular environment. Poor utilization. 93% of companies have EAPs, but only about a quarter of the employees even know what the EAP is, or even been educated on the EAP, or even utilize it, because they're calling into kind of an 800 number, which is going off to nowhere, and they're supposed to share something deeply personal about themselves. There's long wait times. Usually they get care. I think the last time we looked at the data, it takes about 25 to 30 days to get an appointment with a therapist or a psychiatrist if you're utilizing the EAP. By that time, the person's usually given up, or they found somebody else and they're self-paying, which defeats the whole purpose. Insufficient service offerings, meaning usually it's just one giant blanket kind of like, this is what we do, and hopefully you fit into that, as opposed to something specialized, which can be kind of put together in the workplace. I have my own lived experience, and I don't mind sharing it with people, and I have shared it for many years. I'm not only a person in recovery from addiction, but I've also struggled with my mental health for most of my entire life, which is around depression and feelings and thoughts of suicide. And when I was really struggling with the feelings and thoughts of suicide, it was very difficult for me trying to utilize my EAP at my last employer to find a specialist with that focus and that focus only. It wasn't until a friend of mine, someone internally, who was a peer, said to me, I know just the person for you. And it really worked out well. And poor quality. EAPs, generally speaking, don't vet the people that they're referring to. And sometimes there's a lot of research that shows that the strategies they're using in therapy are not considered evidence-based strategies. So there are real limitations to EAPs, which is why we feel, the principles and practices of recovery-friendly workplace allow you to react and be responsive to employees in a way that an EAP can never be. So there are 3 basic approaches to mental health in the workplace. You probably know most of these, if not all of these. Awareness campaigns. And this is like, bracelets that have slogans on them, a poster in the break room. And these have a place, and they're useful. But if awareness is all we do in the workplace, then what happens usually, and going back to my previous employer, after the George Floyd murder, we embarked on a very, very aggressive DEI program, which only was awareness. We ran into it so fast because we wanted to be seen as responsive to this issue, that all we had was awareness. We didn't have anything else. And after a little while, the people that were mostly impacted by what happened with George Floyd started to get demoralized and upset and feeling more marginalized than they did before because we weren't doing anything. So awareness campaigns have a role, but if that's all you're doing, then in the end, you're probably going to end up making things worse than making things better. The clinical referral approach, which is anytime we identify an employee that's struggling, we refer them out. Again, love clinicians. I'm surrounded by clinicians here at work. But there are limitations to that as well, which is it usually puts the responsibility of the reaching out on the employee. So here's a phone number here of a clinician or healthcare agencies that we use locally. Reach out and give them a call. I can tell you firsthand, when I've been in the depths of my depression, picking up the phone and calling somebody is extremely difficult. So that's one limitation. Or finding a therapist that works. For anybody here that's used a therapist, you understand that, finding the one that's a good fit for you is challenging. I think the therapist that I have now, I think it took me 3 or 4 different therapists to find this one that I felt like I really connected with. A lot of people don't understand that because they have to build rapport over time. And when I tell friends who are looking for a therapist, you have to go through 2 or 3 sometimes to find the one you're looking for. They're like, really? I thought you just kind of found somebody. No, you have to kind of vet them yourself. The other problem with the clinical only approach is what you've done is you've marginalized people's natural instinct for caring and farmed it out to somebody else. For instance, if what we do here, the message from leadership is this is what we do, we clinically refer it out. Then if I'm concerned about an employee, I start getting the message, well, I'm concerned about, this person, Lisa, that I work with. But what do I know? I'm not a clinician. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say anything. Although all your natural instincts from all your years of working with this employee tell you there's something wrong, you're getting the message from leadership that don't say anything. Let's just send it out. So you're taking all that human caring capital in the workplace and you're negating it. Clinical can be part of your strategy, but if it is your strategy, I'm suggesting that it's limited in that way. So what really works? What's the final thing? What I call rehumanizing the workplace, which is hopefully a recovery-friendly workplace, which is getting a complete and total approach, which starts with leadership. Not only fiscal support, although all services from recovery-friendly workplace are free. That's good news. But fiscal support, verbal support, if you're a leader and you are in recovery. I think the mayor of City of Providence is an outspoken, advocate for mental health and substance abuse of his own. City of Providence is a recovery-friendly workplace. We do wonderful work with them. But if you're a leader that with lived experience, you're speaking about it. If you are a leader without lived experience, you're still bringing up how important mental health and how you think and feel about it in the workplace. You're providing space for it to happen. You're supporting the programs that happen in the workplace. And I'll talk more about what works, but it's looking at the workplace as a vehicle in which, yes, we have to get things done, but it's also a place where we want to respect the whole person that comes in the door, 69% of employees say that their managers have a greater impact on their mental health than even their spouse. I have or therapist. I can't see it because you guys, the videos are behind me. So what are the challenges of the modern leader? Well, addressing difficult situations. Certainly as a leader of 70 people during COVID, that was certainly something I was stressed about. Weighing employee well-being with organizational priorities. We were a nonprofit large mental health agency, and I work for the state now. So profits aren't necessarily something that I think quite a lot about, but I think about deliverables. I think about things that I need to accomplish, and I got to weigh that with the well-being of employees. And that is something that I don't have 70 people working for me anymore, but I think about it every single day about the people who do work for me and try to find a balance in navigating the complexity of hybrid worlds these days, working from home or working from the office. So what works? Well, this one's on usually the employer, which is employee benefits review. When we look at the research, these are the three things that seem to have the most impact, which is once you have done orientation, most of the employees don't think about EAPs or resources after that. So if I walk down the hallway, here's the litmus test that I usually do when I'm sitting at a new potential member of Recovery Friendly Workplace. I'm at an employer's or a town or a city, and I usually say hypothetically, because I don't do this usually, but if I walk down the hallway and stop the first employee that I found and said, if you were struggling with a substance use issue and or a mental health issue, what are your benefits to help you? Almost all of them say, I don't know. So that is something that all employers can do. They can revisit what the benefits are and communicate them on a regular basis. I think I would go even a step further, because I've had employers say to me, well, I think I can take some personal time off, or the HR person would say to me, well, we have benefits for time off or personal time. And I encourage them to label it for mental health and or substance abuse care. So it's another message that you're sending to employees that you understand that this is a real thing in the workplace. We're not trying to hide it behind a softer, more delicate name, but we're saying if you need time off for mental health treatment or care, here's the time we're offering you. Training of supervisors and managers to have difficult conversations. We work a big part of Recovery Friendly Workplace clientele, if you will, are healthcare agencies. So you would think they are trained to have these conversations, but they're actually not. This is the thing we talk about the most, is how do I bring up that I'm concerned about an employee? Just the other day, I did a social media post on 3 do's and don'ts. So like one, if I express concern to an employee, what you don't want to say to the employee, which has been said to me, is like, wow, you don't look like the type of guy that struggles with mental health issues or thinks about suicide. You got your act together. Wow, that surprises me. You don't say that. What you say is, I really appreciate that you felt comfortable enough to share that with me. I really do. And help me understand it more. I want to really understand what you need from us. Or if they say, hey, I'm struggling with a mental health issue, say, oh, I know a bunch of people that have the same problem. They use this service. You've got to get this phone number from you. You'll love this service. Or so there's a whole bunch of things that we do and we don't. And usually managers, supervisors need training on actually how to have these delicate conversations. Most of the time they're terrified to have these conversations, which is understandable because they're afraid of the liability. But these can be the most powerful and significant moments in the life of an employee and in terms of shaping the workplace culture that becomes a place that fosters connection and psychological safety. I don't know, being a person with lived experience, I can remember almost every single time a supervisor saw me as a real person and said, you know something, Jeff, let's set aside this performance stuff we've been kind of beating on for the last couple of weeks. Are you okay? I just get the feeling that you're not okay, that you're struggling. That is powerful. Ernie shared a story with me that this really, really moved me, and I don't think I can use the language here. Maybe he can tell the story later, but he was telling me about a story of a friend of his that said to him, they're all sitting around like, hey, I'm worried about a buddy of mine who's struggling with a mental health issue, and I think he also owns guns. I apologize, Ernie, if I'm wrecking this story. But what do you have background in this, Ernie? You know something about this stuff. Well, how do I talk to him? Or how do I tell him that I'm concerned? And Ernie thought about it for a moment and just said, just effing ask. So just ask. It's not any more complicated than that. Although there is some training about using the right type of language, like I just demonstrated, but sometimes just asking breaks open something that can be very powerful and healing, and provide some enormous intangible benefits to workplace culture and create an employee that will really become dedicated and loyal. And again, I don't want it to sound like it's a manipulative tactics that we're learning here. It's not. It's you want a workplace where people come and bring their whole selves. And when I say whole selves, meaning all of their talents. And thirdly, workplace peer support programs. Most of you probably have heard about peer support. Mostly it's done by you in the context of Rhode Island healthcare community by outside agencies like recovery community centers have peer recovery specialists, but internal workplace peer support programs have enormous impact on employee culture and workplace culture. What you do basically is you put up some sort of announcement, whether it's a flyer in a newsletter or the workplace saying, are you a person with lived experience with substance use and/or mental health? Would you be willing to be trained as a workplace peer support person, ambassador, if you will, meaning you identify as a person with lived experience and you're open to having other employees come to you and say they're struggling too. And then that person with a specific training from our team knows what the resources are in the community, can direct this employee to those resources, and learns how to listen to the employee compassionately and caringly so they feel heard and seen. And for some cases, that peer support person who's been trained can be a conduit to the supervisor. You know, maybe that you need to go in there with the supervisor and sit down, just offer the encouragement. I'm just right here for you. I'm here supporting you. You talk to the supervisor. I'm going to be here if you need me. And breaking through that fear of going to a supervisor and asking for help. Peer navigators are people with no experience, lived experience, but they're invested in the issue. And they do much the same thing as a peer support specialist. So peer-based programs are very powerful and can have an enormous impact on the workplace. And we do a lot of that training as well. So what happens when these things really start clicking? Employee well-being goes up, engagement, productivity, lower absenteeism, health benefit usage goes down. We are addressing stigma, improved workplace culture, morale, making employees feel more comfortable and seeking support. We want people to know that they can come forward and ask for help. Teamwork, collaboration, retention and support and values of employees stay longer and they lower turnover costs. Now, I'm not just saying this, there's a lot of research that supports this. So I looked at a lot of the trainings that we did, whether they are webinars or chats like we're having right now, specific trainings that I've done on site, and I looked at all the feedback forums about what did you get out of the training. This is basically what it comes down to, being part of Recovery Friendly Workplace and being part of the trainings and consults that go on, that employee individuals in recovery can be part of the company's equity inclusion plan. So people that are in recovery, with this whole emphasis on DEI the last couple of years, there's not been a lot of conversation about people in recovery being part of that inclusive conversation. So Recovery Friendly Workplace kind of pulls back the curtain on this group of people that are in the workplace, but perhaps not seen. And that they're included in this DEI conversation that seems to be happening at many employers. If you want to reduce the stigma associated with substance use and recovery, executive leadership talks about mental health. So a lot of leaders coming to me saying, now I know what to do and how to do it. Evidence-based resources available to the company through my office. RFW policies and practices require individualized and personalized approach. So we can come to your city or town, your workplace, and customize these programs that fit what you're ready for and what you want. Networking with other recovery-friendly workplaces, so you get to know other people doing this. And then being able to evaluate and update your company policies, town and city policies around mental health and helping you through that as well. So some significant improvement by being involved in what we're doing here. So how do you become a member? Well, reach out to me after the call, or later in the week. Go to our website and the membership page and just fill out the form, and most likely you'll see me again. I'll come up to your workplace and we'll sit down and we'll start to discuss what particularly about this call or the initiative in general intrigues you. What are you ready to do? What can you do? You submit a letter of interest, which is the same thing as an email on the website. Decide on a training agenda as outlined in our membership criteria. So we have a lot of training. So finding one that fits you in terms of jumping off. Maybe it's the Narcan. A lot of places start with a Narcan training and awareness training. They need policies about Narcan. They need to know how to use Narcan, and they need some sort of implementation strategy. Where should the Narcan be placed? In something like a city or town, like most of you guys, that is probably a very thorough conversation that needs to happen. Up in my town, I live in Norton, Mass. A lot of the municipal trucks have Narcan in the trucks as they're driving out, and they're engaged with the public. Then you create and distribute your declaration letter. I have some language to the side here. Then you receive a designation from the governor's office. And lastly, you're assigned one of my advisors to kind of work with you on a regular basis. It's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing thing working with you. So you can see some of the language to the right from the Department of Health. That's also Recovery Friendly Workplace. And I sure, Jen can make this PowerPoint available to you so you can read that language later about how they talk about becoming a recovery friendly workplace. And that's the website, the membership page, if you want to go there and fill out that information. So thank you, guys. I'll leave some time for questions if you have them. Stop sharing my screen. There you go.
Great.
40
Thank
minutes.
you,
That wasn't too bad.
And Jeffrey, this is Ernie. Thank you so much for your presentation. For everyone that's listening in, just to give you a little background why we thought this was important for all of you. And from a personal experience, and if you ever see me, I always wear these 2 wristbands, and they're for 2 of my dear friends that committed suicide. I wear it every single day to remind me about them and why did I miss signs that I could have done something to help them, that they wouldn't have committed suicide, including one Marine Sergeant Major Todd Parisi, a war hero, Iraq and Afghanistan, going around the country teaching veterans about how to reduce stress and not to commit suicide, and he ended up taking his own life as well. So I looked at it as saying, what did I miss? And this is an opportunity for all of us to find resources and tools that we could help our employees, our staff, our friends, help them to get through this stress. Because I have 5 sons. I tell them all the time, as you're interacting with people, we have no idea what baggage they're carrying with them. You're looking at them, they're telling you everything's fine, but sometimes it's just not fine, and they don't share. And just like Jeffrey said, there are different ways we can have those conversations to help our staff, our friends, our coworkers, and to help. And that's why we put this together, to give you this information, because rather you have the information, you decide what to do with it, than you not have the information and not know what to do, just like I didn't know what to do with my 2 friends. But I know I'm a little bit more informed now. So thank you. And just to close the loop on what Jeffrey said about the Just F and Ask, just so you get a little background to that. I brought in this national group with veterans. And part of the thing was, there's a lot of work that the Department of Defense does for veterans, but it isn't really that successful. There's over 22 suicides a day, and they're not successful at what they're doing. So when we sat down with the veterans, it was like they don't speak our language. And that's how this concept came up about, I asked the question to them, well, then how should we approach this subject with veterans? And that's when one of them said, why don't you just F and ask? They didn't say F, and they actually said the word. But what we did was we prepared, we do a thing with motorcycle clubs, and there's one person in every motorcycle club that has this patch that just says JFA, and we talk about the concept. So everyone in the club knows that person that's wearing that patch. If I'm having an issue or something I have to deal with, I go to that person. That person has all the resources. It can help direct me to where we have to go. And just like Jeffrey said, it isn't just a matter of just giving someone a phone number and telling them to call. At every meeting, if someone's missing, someone gets assigned to follow up with that person and follow up with them, maybe take them to the VA, take them to their appointment, and not just rely upon them doing it on their own. So just some examples we've learned over life. So I'm going to stop there, but I just want to add a little color to what Jeffrey said. It is important, and we can help people. And that's what I think is an important thing to do. But open it up to any questions from the group.
Jeffrey, Andy Notter in East Greenwich. How are you?
Ian. They
Yeah, we're a member. East Greenwich chose to join the program when it first came out. We're in a bit of a transition. I've got 3 questions for you, high level, and then we can circle back and maybe talk more about them later. The first one's going to be dealing the fact that we're government, we're not a private company, which adds some strings to how we interact with our employees. The second one is going to be about internal programming for our employees versus what we normally offer, and that's external facing supports to the community. Right. And the third is really the employer-employee relationship. So that's kind of the context of some of the questions that I wanted to ask you today, since I've kind of got you captive before the group. And I think they'll apply to a number of other people that are on the call as well. So government versus private. So for me in decision-making at the municipal level, so we're constantly faced with needing to address the well-being of our staff and our employees, but at the same time, trying to strike a balance, right, between how much investment we can make in the individual and how that investment could affect service delivery to the public. And we get faced with at times the point where, and myself, how much do I invest in employee A? And ultimately, do I have the role of doing that, knowing that it's taxpayer funding, they're expecting services constantly? That's a bit of a challenge, I think, for all of us. And so I've personally faced over 33 years in municipal government some of the same situations Ernie and others have faced with employees. And it wasn't that long ago that I faced an issue with a firefighter. And in that environment, it was too risky, to maintain someone in that role. So we worked with the individual for a while, but then we really had to separate. So government-wise, we're a little different. Where it was my company, there are times I might make a different decision, right? Because it's my risk, it's my investment, not the public. So that's kind of the topic one. The second one is internal. We just lost, really tragic here in East Greenwich. Had a 40-year. We're so actively involved in this program and mental health and substance abuse support anyways, because of our former director, Bob Hodeling. Bob had been a champion. I never had a worry in the world because I knew Bob was taking care of it and doing the right thing for employees and out in the community. But he passed. So we're looking at restructuring that department. And I'll probably talk to you offline. We're looking, and most municipalities don't have professionals on staff. Okay, so this is Rhode Island. We're all generally smaller. Even the cities are smaller. There's not always some. East Greenwich, decades and decades ago, probably long before I was here, made that commitment. So I inherited it, and I think, bolstered it and made it better. But I'm at a point in time where I'm going to restructure internally, and I've got some funding to be able to have professional people on staff, which I think will give us a little advantage for our workforce. And the third piece is, like I started to talk about, is no matter what the challenge that the employee's facing, physical, mental, or otherwise, there are limits, right, as an employer as to what we can do. So are you seeing in the industry that there are other legal protections that are coming for this particular classification of employee? Because I've got Rose Emilio on the call as well. She's our administrative services manager here in town, handles all HR, all sorts of programming, is running training for supervisors on mental health, a lot of different things like that. But, where do you see the limit, regarding relationship? Anything you can offer the group today on any or all of those topics would really be helpful.
Those are great questions, Andy. Thanks. Need to address the well-being of the employee versus the investment in them versus their ability to provide services to the public. I'm going to refer back to my former employer because there's just so many good examples there. 70 employees with lived experience. So I was having these conversations all the time about their well-being. It wasn't, just once in a while, like most people that I'm working with, private businesses, or even towns and cities like yourself. It was all the time. And perhaps sometimes I give the impression that it was this kind of holistic, loving, place that, everybody got treated with care and compassion. No, I fired people. Without a doubt. Because I felt as if what they were struggling with was impacting their ability to deliver services in a way that I felt comfortable with. because most of them were doing peer support. They were going out to the field, visiting people with significant mental health issues, providing them with peer support. And if they, if they arrive drunk or they arrive in a kind of a psychotic state, I can't have that. So yeah, there is a limit. But almost in every case, whether it's city government or private, no, people aren't doing enough. So there's always room to go further in terms of how we approach and what we can offer an employee, always keeping in mind, what is their particular role in terms of delivery of services, and are they meeting that? So that's a decision that you have to always weigh, and that's why, leading that team, that was my responsibility to weigh that and be able to go to HR and say, I'm terminating, and these are my reasons why. And they would want to know, what did you do to support this employee? So I had a pretty mapped out plan. So I think in some ways, Recovery Friendly Workplace, when done correctly, gives you a wonderful way of being a compassionate workplace, at the same time delivering what HR wants to know, which is there some plan in place that you can show an effort on your part to provide care and support to this employee? In almost every case, when I was brought into HR to justify a termination, I had a long, long file of me making attempts to provide care and support. So I felt as if much of what I'm asking you guys to adopt was a strength for mine, because the times that we got into liability lawsuits at my last employer, we had them, is because we didn't do enough, not because we did too much. So it's breaking it down into, I think with this topic can become very nebulous for people if they don't work in the field. It just becomes all like, what do you mean by care and compassion and conversations? But it really does come down to very specific approaches that can be documented in consults with HR. And, I'm in the middle of one now, where I'm trying to find the edge of care and compassion with somebody who is responsible for doing specific things that I need. And I am getting to that, we're not there yet, but we may or may not get to that point where I'm not getting what I need, and it's getting to a point where we need to part ways. But I'm gonna part ways feeling good that we've done what we can, not that I didn't do enough. Does that make sense?
It does, to move that needle, as you can imagine, not that easy, right? So in
No.
my experience, I've seen communities at each extreme, those who go to the nth degree and look more internal in supporting their employees, which is a good thing. We're all human, right? We all have challenges, people we know, our family members. So I think most of us are experienced in some way, shape, or form. But then I see others that are very passive and don't provide the service and just turn their head and let the situation go on. And that's something that, in government, we just can't do. So it's to move the needle is going to be challenging, but I can see tremendous need within the municipal sector on somehow providing a higher level of education. So a lot of those smaller communities, and even some of the larger, who might be just inundated and not know where to start and how to address these issues, could really use significant guidance in this area. I think we're doing well here. We still got a lot to learn, but we're doing well here because of the prior commitment and investment in substance abuse and mental health services here in town. We still have a long way to go. But the other challenge today is retention, right? So when you have that good quality employee who's contributing to the organization, but has a challenge, it's clearly worth an investment to try to salvage that situation, not only for you, but also for that individual.
Yeah, like the employee that I just mentioned, been here 20 years. How much time will it take me to replace that skill set? A long time, The best terminations that I had, that sounds weird, but is when I'm terminating the employee and they say, thank you, Jeff, you did do everything you possibly could. That's the win. That's all I'm striving for. They're not surprised. So again, my job is to help you guys build your capacity, that at the end of the day, we still have to part ways with people, but everybody that witnessed what I did or witnessed what we did feels as if we did everything we can to be a workplace where people really are cared about. When people are terminated, almost everybody knows, yeah, that had to happen. But the thing I understand is everybody was watching every move that I made, and everybody's watching every move you make. When you are dealing with employees, they see everything that happens. Whether this is a private conversation that happens in my office. No, it isn't. That employee goes out and says to everybody what's being done. And they know whether you care about them or you're trying hard or you don't. I just want you guys to feel good about and confident and skilled about what you're doing. There are two things that impact the workplace, the ability of the workplace to respond. One is fundamental skills. We can give you that. Two, institutional permission, which is leadership saying to people, I want you to trust your instincts. If you're worried about an employee, tell them you're worried about them. I got your back. We can work with this and we'll figure it out. So hopefully that answers your question. I mean, RIDO, Department of Labor, my department, they're all recovery-friendly workplaces, and we are under the same rules that you guys are under in terms of being a state organization, maybe different. Again, I'm learning. But I think we're under pretty strict HR governance here. But at the same time, there's nothing that we are not doing as a recovery-friendly workplace that interferes with that. As a matter of fact, I think it makes it better.
Well, we may reach out, Jeff, for some future meeting. Maybe we can talk about some of these issues in more detail. But thank you so much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
And I think your last question about HR, and there are things that HR needs to weigh in on regarding disabilities. I think it's ADA, and what needs to be addressed in a certain way and how. And I don't want to pretend to be an expert there, but in terms of some of these issues around mental health, alcohol usage versus drug usage, there is a difference between the two and how ADA approaches those. But certainly, I'm doing consults with HR as it kind of dovetails with my skills around recovery-friendly workplace.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Andy, any other questions for Jeff? All right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being here with us today. Really appreciate it. And everyone, I will have those slides available to you. This is being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel by the end of the day. So I will also share that link out with anyone who might be interested in sharing it along with to your colleagues in your workplace. And I hope everybody has a strong consideration of becoming a recovery-friendly workplace. We'd
love to have a conversation with you. Just shoot me an email off the website, and at the very least, I can come out and we can sit down and talk and see where we could help. Maybe it's a little, maybe it's a lot, but happy to have that conversation. Thanks for having me today.
Great. Thank you. Have a good day,
everyone. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, Jen.